Chapter 5 The Norns. Teddy slammed the door against the wolf. Jack caught his breath. "Welcome," the three Norns said in unison. They all looked exactly alike, except they wore gowns of different colors, blue, brown, and gray. "How are you, Jack, Annie, Teddy, and Kathleen?" said the blue Norn. "We're good now," said Annie. Jack was amazed that the Norns knew all their names. Despite their strange appearance, their friendly smile and twinkling eyes put him at ease. In their cozy house, he began to feel warm for the first time since they had left home. "Was your journey pleasant?" asked the brown Norn. "Yes, we came in the Ice Wizard's sleigh," said Annie. "With the help of the wind string," said Teddy. Jack held up the string and showed him. The great Norns cackled. "Yes, we know. I like a string with knots," she said. "The string without knot would be a boring string indeed," said the blue Norn. "The life without a knot would be a boring life indeed," chimed the brown Norns. As they spoke, the Norns kept waving. Their bulging eyes never blinked. Jack sensed that they never closed their eyes or stopped their work. "Sorry to bother you," said Annie, "but Jack and I need the eye of the Ice Wizard of Winter, so we can save our friends Merlin and Morgan." "We know," said the blue Norns. "We're waving the story of the Ice Wizard now. Come look." Jack moved with others to the loom. Dozens of tiny pictures were woven into the tapestry. The thread were all wintry colors, blue, gray, and browns. "The picture tells the story of the wizard's life," explained the brown Norns. "One picture showed two children playing together. Another showed a boy running after a swan. Another showed two white wolves, and another showed an eye in the circle." "What's the story of the eye?" Jack asked. "Long ago, the Ice Wizard came to us, taking all the wisdom from the world," said the Grey Norn. "We said we would give him wisdom if he gave us one of his eyes. He agreed to the bargain." "The wizard doesn't seem very wise," said Annie. "Indeed he is not," said the brown Norn. "We planted the seed of the wisdom in his heart, but they never grow." "Why did you want his eye?" asked Jack. "We wish to give it to the first giant," said the blue Norn. "The first giant?" said Teddy. "Who is the first giant?" "He is neither magician or mortal," said the blue Norn. "He is the blind force of nature that spared nothing in his path. We hope first giant would use the wizard eye to see the beauty of the world, so he might choose to care for it rather than destroy it," said the brown Norn. "But Alice, the first giant does not use our gift at all. Instead, he kept it hidden away." "Right." Well, we laughed. "Where's that?" asked Annie. The first giant sleep inside the hollow hill," said the Grey Norn. "In the hollow hill is a hole," said the blue Norn. "In the hole is a hailstone," said the brown Norn. "And in the heart of the hailstone hide the wizard's eye," said the Grey Norn. Jack closed his eyes and repeated, "In the hollow hill is a hole. In the hole is a hailstone. In the heart of the hailstone hide the wizard's eye." "Yes," said the Grey Norn. "That is where you must go. But beware, you must never look directly at the first giant. Anyone who looks directly at first giant will freeze to death at once." Jack shivered and nodded. "Well, we better get going," said Annie. "Thanks for your help. The Ice Wizard rhyme tell us to pray you whatever you ask to pay." The Norns looked at each other. I like that waving around her neck," the Great Norn said to her sister. "Just red like a fairy down." The two other Norns nodded eagerly. "My scarf?" said Annie. "Sure, here." She took off her red wooden scarf and placed it on the floor near the Norn's loom. "Lovely," said the blue Norn. "Perhaps we will stop weaving fast and start weaving scarves." The other Norns chuckled. "Well, go now," said the great Norns. "Travel toward the North Star. When you reach the snowy hills, look for the ones whose peak is missing." Jack, Annie, and Teddy started toward the door, but Kathleen stayed behind. "Forgive me, but I have one more question," she said. She pointed to the picture of the swan and the boy on the tapestry. "What is this story?" "'Tis the sad tale," said the grey Norn. The Ice Wizard had a younger sister who loved him more than anything in the world. One day they fought over something foolish. He lost his temper and told her to leave him alone forever. She ran down the sea in tears. Then she found a flock of swan maidens. They gave her a white feather dress. She put on the dress and became the swan maiden herself. She flew away with the other and never returned. After that, the Ice Wizard was never the same, said the blue Norn. When his sister left, he grew cold and mean-spirited. It was as if his sister took his heart with her when she flew away. "That is sad," said Annie. "How will the Ice Wizard's story end?" We will determine the thread we'll weave next," said the brown Norn. "We will?" said Annie. "Yes," said the grey Norn. "Our powers are fading. Our plans no longer work the way we expected them to. The Ice Wizard had no wisdom. The Frost Giant had no sight. You must go now and finish the story." The three sisters smiled at their visitors. Their skinny fingers fluttered over the waving like butterflies over flowers. Jack couldn't help smiling back at them, but then he thought about Merlin and Morgan. She thought all about the dangers waiting outside. "One last question," he said. "What is the story of the two white wolves?" "Oh, the wolves," said the blue Norns. "Do not fear the wolves. A life without wolves would be a boring life indeed." Her two sisters smiled in agreement. For the moment, their smile made Jack feel unafraid of the white wolf, and the Ice Wizard, and the Frost Giant too. "Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye," said the three sisters. Jack and the others waved goodbye. Then they slid out of the house of the Norns and into the icy night. Chapter 6. In the Hollow Hill. Standing in the cold, Jack felt afraid again. There were big paw prints in the moonlight, snow all around the house. "The wolves were here," said Kathleen. "Perhaps we should go back inside," said Teddy. "No," said Kathleen. "We must walk with Jack and Danny back to the sled and stand them on their journey to the Hollow Hill." "Yes, of course," said Daddy, nodding, as they all headed cautiously toward the rocks. Jack glanced back at the house of the Norns. He wished they could return to its cozy warmth. Kathleen put her hand on his shoulder. "Come on," she said. "You must hurry." Jack trod with the other through the passage in the rocks. When they got to the other side, there was no sign of the two white wolves. The silver sleigh was waiting in the moonlight. Jack and Danny climbed inside it. "Can't you come with us?" Jack asked Teddy and Kathleen. "Remember you said if we all work together, we can do anything. Aye, said Teddy, but what the Ice Wizard said is true. Only my troll can undo the bargain with the fate. Do not fear, said Kathleen. We will be with you in spirit, and we will meet you back at the Wizard Palace at dawn. How will you get there? Asked Annie. I have a few rhymes I can try, said Teddy, smiling. And I have a bit of silky magic, said Kathleen. And we have our wind strings, said Annie. Hasten, then, to the Hollow Hill, said Kathleen. And remember what the Norns told you, said Teddy. Never look at the first giant. I know, said Jack. He pulled out the wind string. He took off his glove and tied the knot. The cool breeze began to blow. Jack untied the second knot. The bridge grew stronger. The sails unfurled, and the runners slid forward. Jack untied the third knot. The wind blew hard. The white sail snapped, and the sleigh took off through the night. Stand fast, Teddy called after them. Jack and Annie waved goodbye to Teddy and Kathleen as the sleigh slid swiftly over the sea ice. Soon the sleigh bumped into the snow-covered plain and veered up sharply to the right. No, toward the North Star, Jack called to Annie. Annie turned the rudder, steering the sleigh back on course. They slid toward the bright star in the distance. As the silver runner swished across the windswept snow, Jack braced himself against the cold. He kept a lookout for the white wolf, but he didn't see any sign of them as the sleigh swayed toward the moonlit plain. Soon he could see the row of snow-covered hills in the distance. Look, he said, there it is. He pointed to the one of the hills, the only one without a peak. "'Tis here down!" Annie shouted. Jack untied a knot in the string, and the sleigh began to slow down. He tied the second and the third. The wind died down completely, and the sleigh coasted to the stop at the foot of the hollow hill. Jack and Annie climbed out. Jack looked up at the steep white slope. How do we get inside? He said. I don't know, said Annie. How do you think the first giant got inside? Oh, the first giant, said Jack. He really wished Teddy and Kathleen were with them. He felt that if part of their team were missing. Annie seemed to read his thought. We can do it, she said. We have to, for Morgan and Roland. Jack nodded. You're right, he said. They started the hill in the moonlight. Up there, is that an opening? Said Annie. Maybe, said Jack. Let's climb up and check it out. When they climbed a little way up the hill, Jack could clearly see the break in the snow-covered slope. Let's see if it's land inside, said Annie. Wait, what about the first giant? Said Jack. It had a feeling he's not here right now, said Annie. We better go in and find the wizard eye before he comes back. Okay, said Jack, but be careful. They scurried further up the slope. When they came to the opening, they stepped through the huge crack into the hill. Jack and Danny found themselves on the ledge above the deep, rounded hollow. Moonlight floated down through the open hilltop. At the bottom of the hollow was a flat spot where it looked as if the snow had been blown in circles. That must be where the giant sleep, said Annie. Yeah, and it's probably where he hid the eye, said Jack. We just had to find the hole, remember? He repeated what the Norns had said. In the hollow hill is a hole. In the hole is a hailstone. In the heart of the hailstone hid the wizard's eye. Right, said Annie. Jack looked down at the snowy swirl. He looked back at Annie. Onward, onward, she whispered. Jack and Danny scrambled down into the hollow. Stepping carefully through the silver moonlight, they studied the ground, looking for the hole. Annie stumbled and fell. Whoa, she said. I think we just found a hole. I step in it. Really? Said Jack. He knelt down beside her. Annie reached down into the small hole in the floor of the hollow. There's something in here, she said. She pulled out a chunk of ice size of an egg. It's a hailstone. In the dim light, it was impossible to see if anything was inside the ice tongue. We don't know if this is the right hailstone, said Jack. We have to wait until daylight and see if the ice in there. It had to be the right one, said Annie. How many hailstones are hidden in the hollow hill? Good point, said Jack. Annie turned the hailstone over in her head. Maybe the ice is looking at us now, she said. There's Dangerously impossible, said Jack, and I can't see unless it's connected to the brain. Yeah, and the string can't make the wind blow either, she said. Said Annie. Forget science in this place. Wait, she caught her breath. Did you feel that? Feel what? Said Jack. The ground's shaking, said Annie. Jack did feel the ground trembling. He heard a strange sound too, a loud huffing sound coming from outside the hill. Huff, huff, huff. It sounded like breathing. The giant's back, said Annie. Oh no, cried Jack. The ground kept rumbling. The breathing sound got louder. Hide this hailstone, said Jack. Annie shoved the ice drum into her pocket. Huff, huff, huff. It sounded like a giant was entering the hollow. He's coming, said Annie. Hide, whispered Jack. Jack pulled Annie into the shadow. He remembered the Grey Norn's warning. Anyone who looked directly at Forest Giant will freeze to death at once. Whatever you do, don't look at him, he whispered to Annie. Crunching in the dark, they buried their face in their hands and waited. Chapter 7. The Forest Giant. Huff, huff, huff. With each breath from the forest giant, a blast of cold wind swept through the hollow. Jack trembled. He felt chilled to the bone. Huff, huff, huff. The giant's breathing grew louder and stronger. Jack squeezed his eyes shut as icy wet wind rushed against his body. Huff, huff, huff. Jack crouched lower and held on tightly to Annie. Huff, huff, huff. The giant's breath hurled like 100 ghosts through the hollow. Jack thought of the Blue Norn's word. He is the blunt force of nature that spared nothing in its path. But then the giant's breathing seems to glow a bit softer. What's happening? Jack wondered. The breathing grew softer and softer. So maybe he's going to sleep, Annie whispered. The breathing became calm and steady. The wind died to the light breeze. I think the forest giant is sleeping, Annie whispered. We should try to sneak out of here. Okay, but keep your eyes down. You just look at the ground, whispered Jack. Right, whispered Annie. Their head bowed. Jack and Annie crept cautiously across the floor of the hollow and began climbing up toward the crack. Jack's teeth chattered, but he couldn't tell if it was from cold or fear. Suddenly, a deafening roar shook the night. The first giant screamed with windy rage. He was awake. Jack was blown to the ground. He tried to crawl across the snow, but he didn't know which way to go, and he was afraid to look up. Jack, this way! Annie's voice called above the roll from the giant's breath. She helped him up, and they struggled together against the wind. Finally, they came to the crack in the wall. Jack and Danny scrambled through the crack. Outside, the wild wind knocked them over, and they tumbled down the side of the hill. The wind swirled the snow against the plane. Annie, Annie, Jack called. Where was he? Where was his sled? He couldn't see anything. He couldn't stay on his feet. The wind roared even louder, and avalanches of the snow came crashing down the hillside. Then it hit the ground. The snow exploded into giant clouds of white powder. Jack! Jack! Jack heard Annie's voice in the screaming wind. He tried to stand up, but snow kept falling on top of him until he was completely covered. As Jack lay buried under the ground, all his strength left his body. He knew he should dig his way out, but he was too cold and too tired. He was too tired to look for Annie. He was too tired to fight the first giant. Instead, he closed his eyes and drifted into the icy sleep. Jack dreamed that the cold floor was brushing against his face. He dreamed that the wolf was digging around him, nudging him, pushing him, sniffing him. Jack opened his eyes. He felt dazed. At first, he couldn't see, but he could feel that he wasn't buried in the snow anymore. He wiped off his glasses. He saw the low moon and some stars in the clear sky. The first giant must have laughed, Jack thought, but then he heard a panting noise. He sat up and looked around. One of the white wolves was crouching right behind him. Jack scrambled to his feet. Go away, he shouted. The wolf stepped back and growled. Go, 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 shouted Jack. He picked up a handful of snow and threw them at the wolf. The wolf backed away a few more feet. Jack looked around wildly. Annie was lying very still on top of the snow. The other white wolf was sniffing and pawing at her. Jack's anger made him furious. Leave her alone, he shouted. Go away. He scooped up more snow and threw it. The wolf stepped back. Go, go, shouted Jack. Get away. Leave us alone. He glared angrily at the two white wolves. The wolf stared back at Jack. Their yellow eyes gleamed. I'm not kidding. Go, shouted Jack. Jack stared faithfully at the wolf. Finally, the wolf looked away. Then they glanced at each other and then slowly back up. They looked at Jack and Danny one last time. Then they turned and trotted away over the snow. Jack rushed to Annie. He knelt beside her and lifted her head. Wake up, he said. Annie opened her eyes. You okay? Jack asked. Yes. I dreamed about white wolves, Annie murmured. Me too, said Jack. And then when I woke up, they were here. They were about to eat us. Really? Annie sat up and looked around. Yeah, but I scared them off, said Jack. What about the first giant? Annie said. He's gone too, said Jack. Come on, let's get out of here. Jack felt Annie out from the snow. Did you still have the wizard's eye? Annie felt in her pocket. Got it, she said. Good. Jack looked around. Beyond the heaps of fallen snow, the silver's light was waiting for them. Overhead, the sky had turned a light shade of gray. It's almost dawn, said Jack. Remember what the wizards say? We have to bring back his eye by the break of day, or we'll never see Merlin or Morgan away again. Jack held Annie's hand and they trudged together through the snow. When they got to the sled, they climbed inside. Annie took her place at the rudder. Jack pulled out a windspring and untied the knot. The breeze rocked the sled. Jack untied the second knot and the sled began to fill. He untied the third, and the silver sled moved forward, gliding over the white ground. Swish, swish, swish. The sled moved through the thick snow and away from the hollow hill. As they sailed over the white plain, the sky was turning from gray to pale pink. "We have to go faster," said Annie. Jack untied the fourth knot. The wind whistled in his ears. The sled picked up speed. Annie steered it past the rock and over the sea ice. She steered it over the plain south to the palace of the Ice Wizard. When the sled drew close to the palace, Jack tied the knot, and they began to slow down. He tied 3 more, and the sled came to a stop. Jack and Danny looked around the faint cold light. "I wonder where Teddy and Kathleen are," said Annie. "They said they meet us here at dawn." Jack started to face the white plain, but he saw no sign of their friends. He wished he had Kathleen's vision. "I hope they're okay," he said. "I hope they didn't run to the white wolf. I have a feeling the wolves wouldn't hurt them," said Annie. "The wolf in my dream seems nice." "Dream wolves are different from real wolves," said Jack. "I don't think we can wait for them," said Annie. "The eye had to be back the time the sun's up." "The eye," said Jack. "We never looked to see if it was inside the hailstone." Annie reached into her pocket and pulled out the hailstone. She held it up. Jack gasped. Staring out at him from inside the ice was an eyeball. It was about the size of a large marble. The eyeball was white with a sparkling blue center. "Oh man," whispered Jack. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said Annie. "I don't know about that." Jack felt a little queasy. Seeing an eye outside of the human head was too weird for him. "Put it away for now," he said. Annie put the hailstone back in her pocket. Jack looked around again. The sky had brightened from pale pink to red. The thin silver was the sun was peeking over the horizon. "The sun!" cried Jack. "Hurry!" He and Annie jumped out of the sleigh and charged toward the palace. When they got to the entrance, Annie gasped. Annie stopped. "Look," she said, pointing to the big paw prints in the snow. "Wolf tracks." "Oh no," said Jack. "Do you think the white wolves are inside? That's weird." "It doesn't matter. We have to go in. Hurry," said Annie. They rushed into the palace just as the fairy ball of the sun rose over the horizon. Chapter 8. Return of the Eye. Jack and Danny walked through the front hall of the palace, past the ice columns, and into the wizard's throne room. The walls and floors glittered with the brilliant, cold light of dawn. "Uh-oh," said Jack. The wizard was waiting for them, and the 2 white wolves were sleeping on either side of his throne. Jack was confused. Why are they here? He wondered. Do they belong to the wizard? The wolves lifted their heads and sniffed the air. Their ears pricked up. When they caught sight of Jack and Danny, they sprang into their feet. They stared at them with piercing yellow eyes. The Ice Wizard was staring intently at Jack and Danny too. "Well," he said, "did you bring back my eye?" "Yes," said Jack. Annie took a hailstone out of her pocket and held it up to the wizard. Jack watched the wolf nervously as the hailstone passed from Annie's small hands into the wizard's large rough hands. The wizard stared down at a chunk of ice. Then he looked at Jack and Danny. "Indeed, you are heroes," he said breathlessly. "Not really," Jack murmured. The wizard looked again at his eye inside hailstones. Then, with a quick movement, he slammed the ice chunk against the arms of his throne. Jack and Danny gasped and stepped back. The wizard slammed the hailstone against his throne again. This time, the ice cracked. The wizard gently prayed his eye out of the heart of the hailstones. He lifted the frozen eyeball into the air and started it in the light. Then, with his eager cry, he ripped off his eye patch. Jack and Danny watched in amazement as the wizard fit the eye into its dark, empty socket. Jack held his breath. He was horrified, yet fascinated. He couldn't imagine someone just shoving an eye back into his head. The wizard slowly lowered his hands. He seemed to be holding his breath. He had 2 eyes, but the new one didn't move. It looked as if it was still frozen. Jack worried. If the eye didn't work, the wizard might not help them. We brought your eye, he said. So, can you tell us where Merlin and Morgan are now? The wizard jerked his head to look at Jack. He covered one eye with his hand, then covered the other. In the frenzy, he went back and forth, covering and uncovering each eye. Finally, the wizard dropped his hands and roared, "No!" The wizard howled, shook the ice column. "You have tricked me." "No, we hadn't," said Annie. "This ice is useless, cried the wizard. "It had no life, no sight." "But that's the eye you gave to the Norns," said Annie. "You promised if we brought it back, you'd give us Merlin and Morgan." The 2 white wolves threw back their hands and howled. "No!" cried the wizard. You tricked me! Let's get out of here," whispered Jack. He pulled Annie toward the ice column. "Stop!" shouted Wizard. "You cannot escape me." He grabbed Merlin's staff of strength. The wolves growled and yelped. The wizard pointed the staff at Jack and Annie. He started to say a spell. "Raw-E." "Wait!" someone yelled. Teddy burst into the throne room. Wait! The wizard held his staff in the air. He stared wildly at Teddy. His face was twisted with rage. We have something for you," Teddy shouted at the wizard. "Kathleen!" he shouted. He called. Kathleen stepped out of behind the ice column. With her was the young woman with the long braid. The woman wore a flowing dress. Around her shoulder was a white feathered cloth. Her eyes rested on the wizard, and a radiant smile sprang over her face. She began walking slowly toward the throne. The wizard lowered Merlin's staff of strength. He stared back at the young woman. All the colors drained from his eyes. For a long moment he was as still as a statue. Then an ice blue tear leaked out of his frozen eye and ran down his white cheek. Jack and Danny stood with Kathleen and Teddy. They all watched the young woman and the ice wizard stare silently at each other. "Is she his sister, the Swan Maiden?" whispered Danny. "Yes," whispered Kathleen. The Swan Maiden spoke to the ice wizard in the strange language. "Val Evo Mon." The wizard did not answer. Tears flew gently now from both his eyes. "Val we Van O One," the Swan Maiden said again. "What's she saying?" Jack asked. "She is saying, 'I have come back to forgive you,'" said Kathleen. The wizard stood up. He walked down the step from his throne. He gently touched the Swan Maiden's face, as if to make sure she was real. Then he answered her softly in the strange language. "Fall a one." "How did you find her?" Jack asked Teddy. "The seal took us under the ice to Isle of the Swan," said Teddy. "When we find her, I told her how much the wizard has missed her," said Kathleen. "I also told her about the 2 of you and how you always help each other. I told her she should return her brother and be his friends again." The wizard and his sister kept speaking softly to each other in their strange language. Warm sunlight shimmered through the palace windows. Annie stepped forward. Excuse me, she said. The wizard looked at her. My sister had returned home, he said with wonder. I can see with both eyes now. I can see perfectly. I'm glad, said Annie, but now you must give Merlin and Morgan back to us. The wizard looked at his sister. She nodded. The wizard held out Merlin's staff of strength. Use this to bring them back, he said. Hold it tightly and call out for them. He gave the staff to Annie. Annie could barely lift it by herself. Holding it with me, Jack, she said. Jack stepped forward and grabbed the magic staff. The smooth golden wood felt warm and velvet in his hands. As they grabbed the staff together, Annie threw back her head and called out, Merlin and Morgan, come back! The long burst of blue light shot out of the end of the staff and flashed toward the two white wolves. Suddenly, wolves' eyes changed into the human eyes. Wolf noses changed into the human noses. Wolf mouth changed into the human mouth. Wolf ears turned into human's ears. Wolf paws turned into human's hands and feet. Wolf fur into a long red cloud. The two white wolves were gone, and the man and woman stood in their places. Chapter 9. Wisdom of the Heart. Merlin, Morgan, shouted Annie. Teddy and Kathleen cried out in amazement. Annie rushed to Morgan and hugged her. Jack was filled with great relief. Hi, he said. Hi, welcome back, sir, Teddy said to Merlin. Thank you, said Merlin. He looked at Teddy and Jack and Annie. And thank you for turning us back into ourselves. We didn't know you and Morgan were the wolves, Annie said. We were following you so we could help you, said Morgan. The wizard told us that if you caught up with us, you would eat us, said Jack. Really? Said Morgan. They all looked at the ice wizard. Standing with his sister, he stared guiltily at Morgan and Merlin. I feared that if they got close to you, they might discover who you are, he said, but I will do no more harms, I promise, for I can see clearly now. The wizard looked back at his sister, and his blue eyes shined with joy. You can see because you have your heart back, said Merlin. It was not only your eye that was missing, it was also your heart. We see with our heart as well as our eyes, and now perhaps you can find the wisdom you are seeking from the Norns, said Merlin. For wisdom is knowledge learned with the heart as well as the head. The ice wizard nodded. Please find it in your heart to forgive me, he said. Use my flag to take you safely home. Yes, indeed, we must leave now, said Morgan. We have been gone from Camelot too long. The next time you come to Camelot, my friend, you must come as a guest, said Merlin, not as thief in the night, and you must bring your sister also. Merlin said to the wizard, Indeed I will. The wizard said. Merlin looked at Jack, Annie, Teddy, and Kathleen. Is everyone ready to leave now? He asked. Yes, sir. They all answered together. Merlin looked at the staff of strength in Jack's hands. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot, said Jack. He handed the heavy staff to Merlin. As soon as Merlin held the staff to strength, he seemed more powerful. Let us be off, he said briskly. Merlin and Morgan led the way out of the throne rooms, their red cloaks billowing behind them. Teddy and Kathleen followed, and Jack and Annie hurried after them. Just before they left the rooms, Jack and Danny glanced back at Ice Wizard and his swan sister. They were deep in conversation again. They hadn't seen each other for years, said Annie. They must have a lot to talk about. Yeah, said Jack. He couldn't imagine not seeing Annie for years. Come on, let's go. He took her hands and pulled her out of the throne room, through the front hall, and into the cold dawn. Jack and Annie followed their 4 Camelot friends to the wizard's slave. Everyone climbed in. Annie sat at the rudder. Jack stood at the front. He pulled out the wind string and untied the knot. The slave rocked forward. He untied another, and the slave started moving very slowly. The sled was heavier than before, so Jack quickly untied 2 more knots. The sled bolted across the snow. Stand fast, said Teddy. As the sled swished through the dawn, Annie turned to Morgan and Merlin. I have a question, she said. Can you tell us what the giants look like, the first giant? Merlin smiled. There is no first giant, he said. What? Said Kathleen and Teddy. Sure there is, said Annie. We heard his breathing. He nearly froze us to death, said Jack. At night, the wind often rolled through the hollow hill like a cyclone, said Merlin. You experience one of these storms. But what about the Norn's story of giving the wizard eye to the first giant as a gift? Said Jack. Many ancient people believe that the first of nature are actual giant or monster, said Morgan. The Norns are the last of their kind. They hold to the idea that the first giant is a living creature who haunt the hollow hill. In truth, the first giant never accepts their gift because there is no first giant. Jack shook his head. We believe what the Norns believe. They told us we'd freeze to death if we looked directly at first giant, and believed what the wizard told us too, said Annie, that the wolves would eat us if they caught up to us. People often try convince us that the world is scarier than it truly is, said Morgan. Right now, the world didn't seem at all scary to Jack. Everything was calm and bright. Soft, rose-colored light was breaking through the morning clouds. Today is the first day after the winter solstice, said Morgan. Today, the lights start to return. The days will grow longer. Jack turned to look at the sun. He caught sight of the treehouse sitting on top of the snowdrift, not far away. Jack tied a knot in the windstream. He tied 3 more, and the sled came to the stop at the foot of the snowdrift. Merlin looked at them. On the winter solstice, you showed great courage, he said. You endured storm and terror and extraordinary cold. You retained the Ice Wizard and the Swan Maiden. And perhaps most important, you retrieved my staff of strength. I thank you. Sure, Jack and Annie said modestly. You have done much for the kingdom of Camelot on your last 4 missions, said Merlin. On your next adventure, you will have a mission back in your world, in real time, not in the time of math and magicians. We will call for you again soon, said Morgan. Great, said Annie. Jack and Danny climbed out of the sleigh. They looked back at Teddy and Kathleen. I hope you will help us with our next journey too, said Annie. Teddy smiled. If we all work together, we can do anything, aye? He said. Aye, said Jack and Danny together. Then they turned and trudged up the snowdrift. At the top, they climbed into the window of the tree house. Once they were inside, they looked back. The sled was gone. "Bye," Annie said softly. Jack picked up the small gray stone from the floor. He pointed at the word Frog Creek in the wizard message. "I wish we could go there," he said. The wind started to blow. It blew harder and harder. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. They were back in the Frog Creek woods. No time at all had passed while they'd been gone. It was almost twilight. Snowflakes fell like tiny feathers outside the treehouse window. Annie shivered. "I'm cold," she said. "Here, take my scarf," said Jack. He pulled off his scarf. "No, you need it," said Annie. "No, take it. I'll be okay." Jack put his scarf around Annie's neck. "What will you tell Mom when she asks about your scarf?" he asked. "I just tell her the Sister of Fate took it as payment for telling us how to find the eye of the Ice Wizard in the hole in the Hollow Hill," said Annie. "Right," said Jack, laughing. "We better get home before dark," said Annie. She started down the rope ladder. Jack followed her. As they stepped onto the ground, Jack remembered the wind string. "We forgot to give this back," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the string. "I guess Merlin's magic took the slate back to Camelot." Jack and Danny looked at the string for a moment. "Untie the knot," Annie whispered. Jack took off his glove and untied the knot. He held his breath and waited. Nothing happened. He gave Annie a little smile. "I guess in our world it's just a piece of string," he said. Jack put the string back in his pocket. He and Danny started walking over the snowy ground between the trees. As they walked, Jack looked for Teddy and Kathleen's footprints, but they were completely gone. Jack and Danny moved out of the woods and down the street. They saw Christmas tree light sparkling in people's houses and candles shining in windows. Their boots squeaked as they crossed their snow-covered yard. When they got to the stair of the porch, Jack stopped. He stared at the astonishment. Annie's red wooden scarf was dropped over the railing of the porch. "I don't believe it," said Jack. "I do," said Annie. They hurried up the stairs, and Annie grabbed her scarf. "Look," she said. She held it up the scarf to show Jack. There was a tiny picture woven into it. The picture of him and Annie and 2 white wolves. Jack was speechless. "Cool, huh?" said Annie. She gave Jack back his scarf. Then she untied the scarf around her neck. She tied her scarf around her neck. She tucked the part with the picture under her jacket collar. The front door opened. A delicious smell whiffed out from the house. "Hi," said their mom. "The cookies are ready. Come inside and get warm."